putting money in the bank. And so you put, let's say you put $100 in the bank, and you leave it there for like a year. And the bank promises you some interest, and they usually quote you an interest rate. An interest rate. Okay, and we'll use R for the interest rate, and that will be the yearly interest rate. So that will tell you how much interest you're going to get per year. Okay, so let's say, let's make it easy. Let's say it's just 10%. Of course, not likely to be 10%, but probably more like 2%. But let's just use 10% because that's easy. And by the way, how else can you write percent? Of course, you can write that as a decimal, right? So you could write it as 0.1, like that, right? That's 10%. So if you're going to do calculations, you want to use this, not this, because this doesn't work, right? Okay, so if they do that, if they give you 10%, then in 1 year, you can ask how much interest you're going to get. And obviously the answer is $10, right? 10% of 100. So the interest you get, which in this book they use this symbol, that's the amount of interest you get. In this case it's going to be $10, but the calculation that we just did was we said $100 times the interest rate, right? And that gave us the $10. So in general, the interest is this amount, the amount that you put in, times R, right? Okay, and the amount that you put in, or the amount at the beginning, has a name, and that is called the present value. Okay, as opposed to what comes out at the end is called the future value. Okay, so the present value is $100, and then you can say, well, how much do you have at the end? Well, you still have the $100, hopefully. They didn't keep it. And then you also have interest, which is $10, so you have $110. So that's called the future value, $110. Okay, so if this works out right, you would have that afterwards, right? You'd have the $100 plus the interest, and this is called the future value. Okay? So, we'll use a PV for present value, and we'll use FV for future value. And another word for present value in other books is principal. The principal. But they're not using that in this book, I don't think. I think it's AL, right? Principal. Is that right? Or is it LE? I'm not sure if it's LE or AL. Could be principal. Which one is it? I'm not sure. Maybe it's LE.
Yeah, it's LE.
It's LE, sorry. LE, okay. So it's principal like that. Okay? So, all right, so this terminology clear? So what do we have? We have PV for the present value. We have FV for the future value. We have R for the yearly interest rate. And we have the calculation for the interest. We can write now like that. PV times R. Right? So everyone agree with that? Okay. So, of course, like if the interest rate was, 20%, that would be good. If the interest rate was 20%, then how much interest would you have? You'd have $100 times 0.2, you get $20 interest, right? So this, of course, this formula still applies, right? PV dot R. Okay? Okay, so, okay, and then one more variable or symbol is T is the time in years. So you might do this for more than 1 year. So, you might do it for 2 years. So let's say the interest rate was back down to 10%. Okay, the interest rate is 10%. So if you did it 2 years, then you get 10% 2 times. So you'd get $10 plus $10. So your interest would be $20. And if you did it for 3 years, you get $10 3 times. So your interest would be 10 plus 10 plus 10, or $30, right? So if you do this for more than 1 year, then we should amend this formula to write it like that. Right? That will be the interest. It'll be P, V, R, and T. Right? So let's say you did it for 3 years. So T equals 3. You say, how much money do you have? How much interest did you get? So this is 100, and this is 0.1, and this is 3. So does it work? Yeah, it works. Right, $10. 100 times 10% is $10, times 3 is $30, right? So you get 30. So the formula is PVRT if we're doing it for more than 1 year. Okay? So now we can write the formula for the future value. Well, we just did it, so let's just write what we just did. So we just said that how much will we have? We're going to have, of course, the $100 that we started with, plus the interest, right? Right? And but we want to do it for numbers other than we're not stuck with just $100, right? Suppose you put in $1 million, you want to also be able to work with that. So the 100 is just the PV. So the future value is the present value plus the interest. Okay, but we can do a little bit of algebra on this. We can write PV plus PVRT, right? Okay. That's just the interest. We just put in the interest formula. But then we can factor out the PV in those two terms, right? That's not... Okay? So we could write as what? PV times... If I factor out the PV from here, I just get 1 left, right? Plus RT, right? So if you multiply this times this and this times this, you get this and this, right? Okay, so that's the formula that we often write. FV is that. Okay, so the future, so that's our formula. Okay, so let's just do another example. Let's suppose that they tell you that you're going to invest, $1 million. And the interest rate that the bank offers you is super high. It's 5%. That's pretty high, right? 10% is ridiculous, right? But 5% is very high. Okay, and let's suppose you leave it in the bank for 10 years. So you just want to know what's the future value for that. Okay, so you just put these numbers into that equation and you should get the answer. So what do you get? You get $1 million times 1 plus R is 0.05 times T is 10 years. Like that, right? So what does that give you? This term gives me 50%, right? So So becomes a million, 1 plus 0.5, or 1.5, so that's obviously $1.5 million. Okay, so if you got 5% interest and you did that for 10 years, you get $1.5 million as your future value, right? Okay, anybody have any questions about how to do this? This is easy calculation, right? Okay, now let's say that I want to know how much money do I have to put in the bank today so that it's worth $1 million in 5 years. Or let's say that it's worth $1 million in 20 years. How much money do I have to put in the bank today to get $1 million, so that it's worth, the future value is $1 million in 20 years. Now, we have to state an interest rate, otherwise we can't do it. So let's say, what interest rate? Let's say 5%, which is not likely, but let's pretend that you could get that. So let's say R is 0.05, and we're going to invest this in the bank for 20 years, and we want to have $1 million. We want to know how much do we have to put in today. Right, so in this case, we're not trying to figure out the future value. We're assuming that the future value is going to be 1 million, and we want to know what do we have to put in today. In other words, we want to know what's the present value that we have to put in today to get that future value. So now, the people who invented algebra are our friends, right? Who invented algebra? I think algebra comes from someplace in the Middle East. I think it was done by a guy named Algebra. Something like, his name was something like Algebra. Not exactly algebra, obviously, but it's something similar to that. So we can thank him, or them, for helping us to do this, because we can say, oh, now we want to solve for PV, and we want an equation for PV, because that's what we're trying to figure out. We want to know what the PV we have to have is in order to get $1 million at the end. But that's very easy to solve this for PV, right? Just bring this up to the other side. Right? Just bring this over here. So PV is equal to what? Right? Just bring this over here. Okay? And so now we can just fill in that and get the present value. Right? Did everyone see? I just brought this over here, right? That's easy. So, so what? So what are the numbers we have to put in? We want to know how much do we have to get today? How much do we have to put in today? So we just put in R is 0.05. We put in T, we're going to do it for 20 years. And we're put in 1 million. And whatever this works out to is how much we have to invest today. Yeah? What did I make a mistake?
Shouldn't the FB in the numerator, not the denominator?
Did I make a mistake?
Because you divide 1 plus...
Oops, sorry. Why? That's why everybody was looking at me like something. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so what do I have to do? I messed this up. I messed that up.
FB...
So FPV is, sorry.
FB over...
Yeah, FB over 1 plus RT. Sorry about that. Okay, so now, so that's why I was wondering how anybody could be confused by what I said, because it's not very hard, but now I see why. Okay, so what do we do now? We put in the million here, and we divide by 1 plus 0.05 times 20. Right? Okay, now I got it, right? Okay, so whatever that number is, that's going to be how much we have to put in now. So what is that? Anybody have a calculator? What is it? Exactly 500,000, okay. So 500,000. Because, why is that? Because this is what? These two together give me what? 1, so it's 1 plus 1. Right? Divided into 1 million. So that's 500,000. Okay, so if you put 500,000 now, and you did this for 20 years, you'd have 1 million at the end. Okay, everybody happy with that? Okay, now of course you could ask a different question. You could say, suppose I put 300,000 in, and I wanted to have 1 million in 20 years, what interest rate would I have to get? Right, so that would mean you want to solve for the interest rate and fill in everything else, and then, so what have you solved this for the interest rate? What should I do? I guess this one's going to make it easier. So I could do FV, let's see if I make a mistake here, minus PV over PVR. Is that wrong or right? From here. FV minus PV, and then divided by PV, sorry, like that. Is that right? Okay, so that would tell you the interest rate that you'd need to get a certain future value given a certain present value and given the time. Okay, anybody have any questions about that? You can solve that as well. Okay, anybody have any questions about this? Okay, so this is the kind of problem that appears in the homework. Okay, so you can just do those. In fact, let's do one now. Let's have a quick quiz. Let's do Socrative. Okay, the room number is 527048. Okay, so let's just try one of these. Anybody have any questions before we do this? Okay, you can try that on Socrative. Okay, does anybody need more time? Okay. Should we grade this by majority rule? So, whatever the majority says is right, is that what's right? Possibly, but possibly not, right? So, you know what, I think it was Winston Churchill said about democracy. He said something like, democracy is the worst form of government. No, it wasn't like that. He said, well, I'm going to say it like that. Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the other ones. Or I think he said something like, yeah, anyway, that's basically it. So should we grade this by democracy? Well, how about if people designed your iPhone based on democracy? I mean, like they said, okay, let's, make this circuit according to, what everybody votes for as the best circuit. Now, it's probably not going to work very well, right?